Yeah. Okay. Ois Daled. So the Rebbe explained in the previous Ois that Tishrei, in the original, the way it was before Matan Torah, was Take the Rosh Chodeshim. It also had the level of uh, higher than Teva, but it was still shaykhs to the world. It was nature, and within nature, it was a chidush higher than world. But in Nissan, it's a totally new. It's a gilui of an oir which is much higher than the world. So like this. So what he said like this, that before Yitzias Mitzrayim, the oir that came down in Tishrei was the oir that created the world. And the Atzmus oir in Sof, which is higher than world, that came through in Nisan in the Chodesh HaGeula. So basically, HaChodesh Hazeh Lochem, that on Nisan, after the Yitzias Mitzrayim and Matan Torah, there is a whole new tziruf. The Rebbe spoke about the tziruf of the Shem Adnai, Aleph Dalet Nun Yud, the 12 combination, but those are all as connected to Hishtalshalus. And then you have the tziruf of Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is the tziruf of L'maylo Mishtalshalus. Dalet. So the Rebbe, B'tzorich Lahavin. So we need to understand this explanation. The Lefi Biur Zeh, according to this explanation, Nimtza L'chayre. So it turns out, seemingly, the Zeh Shala'achre Yitzias Mitzrayim Nison Urosh Chadashim. The fact that after Yitzias Mitzrayim, Nisan becomes the head of the month, Hurak be'inyan hachadoshim shalamaylo me'abriya. That is only in the matter of chadoshim. Those chadoshim that are higher than creation, those that are connected to the 12 tzirufim of Shem Havaya, Shem Hayud based tzirufim, the Shem Havaya. She'inyonom hu hagilui de oir ein sof shalamaylo mishaychus loylamois. The 12 tzirufim of Yud Kei Vav Kei, they reveal the Ein Sof higher, that are higher than connecting to the world. And when does that start? Rosh Chodeshim for Nisan. So Nisan is the first month of this higher level of revelation. Nisan is the first month in which the Giluyim of the Shem Havaya, which is higher than world, that's the beginning of the of Nisan. But the Giluyim that have a shaykhs to the world, like from Adnai, that still remains in Tishrei. So it seems Tishrei is the beginning of the year with regards to the Oir, which is connected to the Bria. But with regards to the Oir, which is higher than the Bria, higher than Oilamos, the miraculous, that's Nisan. Nisan is the first of the miraculous months, the months that are higher than creation, the Yud Kei Vav Kei, and Tishrei is the head of the Adnai, the 12 tzirufim of Adnai, which is connected to the world. However, the Meloshin HaTargum, the language of the Targum, we were translating before the word of Yerach ha'esonim. Yerach ha'esonim, says the Targum, that what is Yerach? It's talking about the month of Tishrei. So he says it's called Yerach ha'esonim, meaning the older ones. What happened in the past? So the Targum says the Atikayo, the older ones in the past, meaning before there was Matan Torah, and before there was Yitzias Mitzrayim, Atikayo in the past, Koron Le Yarcho Kadmo. They called Tishrei. This is what the Targum says, that in the beginning, Tishrei was called the first month, Yarcho Kadmo. The Atikayo called it the first month. So that means Esonim, Yerech Esonim, the older one, that was the first month. What is the Targum says? Uke'an. But now, it changed. It's no longer the first month. Hu Yarcho Shvi'o. Now it become the seventh month. So if you read the words in the Targum, he's telling you that Tishrei changed. The way the Rebbe explained, Tishrei remained the beginning because in the level of Shaychas Lo'ilamos, Tishrei remained. It's only that Nisan became the month for higher than Oilamos. The Shem Havai, the Tzuruf from Shem Havai, that starts with Nisan. But the Targum really says that the month of Tishrei is no longer the first month. It became the seventh month. That means that something changed, that Tishrei is no longer really the first month. Even after, that means that after Nisan became the first Rosh Chadashim, Tishrei is no longer the first month. So Melosh again, Melosh and Hatargum. The Atikaya Koron LeYorcho Kamod Mo. The first one's called Tishrei, the first month. But Uke'an, but presently, Huyarcha Shviod, it's the seventh month. Mashma, from this it appears, Shezeh She'achshov Nisan, Hu Horishoin. Now that we say that Nisan is the Rishon, Ugam be'inyan hachadoshim shabehem hoyo Tishrei harishon. Even in this aspect of the Chadashim in which Tishrei was the Rishon, it's no longer Rishon. Now it's Shvi. Now the Rishon is Nisan. Mashma shezeh she'achshav Nisan harishon ugam be'inyan hachadoshim shabehem hoyo Tishrei harishon. Even in those aspects that Tishrei was the Rishon, it's no longer Rishon. Hainu, Achadoshim, the Yud-based Tzurufei Adnai, the month of the 12 combination of Adnai, which is the 12 months of Tishrei, that Tishrei is the first, She'inyonim Hugilu Oirin Sof HaShayich Lo'ilamos, whose idea is to reveal the Ein Sof that is connected to the world. Tishrei is no longer the Rosh Chodashim. It was taken over by Nisan. The Rebbe's explanation was before that Tishrei remained the Rosh Chodashim for the Shem Adnai, for the Erin Sof HaShayich Lo'ilamos. But then Nisan became the Rosh Chodashim for the Yud-based Tzurufim B'Shem Havaya of higher than Oilamos. But here, it's mashma that Nisan became also the Rosh Chodashim for what Tishrei was before the Rosh Chodashim, for the Gilu Shaykh Lo'ilmas. And then, besides that, the Rebbe says, you see that even after we once we have Rishon, L'chot Shashona, it's not only the Nisan for higher than Ishtalshelus, it is actually of all aspects. Nisan became, you see from the Pasuk, from the Chumash, V'chein, move on, Gam mizeh sheminyan chadoshim b'Torah b'chol mokum u'menisan. There's no such a thing anymore in the Torah that we count from Tishrei. All the months in the Torah are always starting from Nisan. That tells us that Nisan took over the place of Tishrei. It's not like there is a little bit of Tishrei is also the first, and Nisan only took it over in one aspect. That tells us that there is no longer a first of Tishrei. Because Sheminyan HaChadoshim b'Torah b'chol Nisan, the Iyar Nikra Chodesh HaSheni, Sivan Chodesh HaShlishi, everywhere. So it tells us, Ki la'achere Yitzias Mitzrayim u'matan Torah. So after Yitzias Mitzrayim matan Torah, Nisan hu Chodesh HaRishon b'negei l'chol inyanim. Nisan becomes the first month of all inyanim. Not only for this higher than Ishtalshlus, not only from the Ein Sof, which is higher than the Shaykhis L'Olemas, but even the Ein Sof L'Olemas. Not like we explained before, that Tishrei remains in its status, but Nisan is a new aspect. And the Rebbe brings another one. So first of all, the Torah always uses Nisan as the first of the month. So we don't find anything about Tishrei anymore. That means that something was taken away from Tishrei and was given to Nisan, not that we added something new by Nisan and Tishrei still remains in its place. But more than that, the Rebbe proves this. Also, in the portions of the Torah, the sections of Torah, which come before the Eibishter changed it, HaChodesh Hazeh Lochem Resh Chadashim. So, Mekivon Shegam Parshias Elu Hem Chelik MaTorah. So these Parshias are part of the Torah Shenitno La'achere Yitzias Mitzrayim. So even though they describe the things that happened before Parshas HaChodesh, but in other words, you can't say that before Parshas HaChodesh, over there the months were different, and now the months changed. But the story of what took place with Parshas HaChodesh is recorded after the Yitzias Mitzrayim. Kivon shegam Parshas Elu chem chelik ma'Torah shenitno la'achar Yitzias Mitzrayim v'adibur harishon dematan Torah. And the first saying, the Eibishter Matar Hu Anochi Asher Yitzisichom Eretz Mitzrayim, that I've taken you out of Eretz Mitzrayim. So the beginning of Torah, that's the first dibur that they heard. So in other words, Matan Torah begins with Yitzias Mitzrayim. So Minyan HaChadoshim Bahem, and we count the minyan of the Chadashim before HaChodesh. It still starts from Nisan, not from Tishrei. But why would we start it from then? At that time, we didn't even have yet the HaChodesh. So we have to say a different explanation. What happened and why did we change? And what happened to the month of Tishrei that it no longer functions as the beginning? At least let it be for the oil that is shaykhs to the Ilmas. So something changed over here, as the Rebbe will explain. But the Rebbe, we'll try to explain now, which the Rebbe is not going to accept, but the Rebbe is going to explain. In the pasuk, it says, "HaChodsh hazeh lochem rosh chodashim." That's one statement. But then there's a second statement that says, "Rishon hu lochem lechodshei hashana." So that means that the Torah wants to say that Nisan brought in this Gilui of Shem Havaya, but it also became a Rishon for the Chodshei Hashana, which means that this higher level of higher than Oilamos, the level of Shem Havaya, the level of the Gilui in the month, the new month, also comes down in Teva. So B'meila, the Itaka changed not only that it became a Hanhoga, a Chodesh, a Nisa, miraculous Hanhoga, but that Hanhoga also changed the regular Hanhoga. Let's look inside. We could explain this based on what it says in the Maimer. The fact that in the Pasuk, after it says, "HaChodesh hazeh lochem rosh chodashim moisif rishon hu lochem lechodshei hashana." He says it's the first for chodshei hashana. Who? So what does the Maimer explain? The chodshei hashana, since we call them chodshim hashana, so the way the Rebbe said before, the word shana represents repetition. Chodesh represents renewal. Here it's Chodshei Hashana. So what does the Maimer explain? What does it mean, the Chidushim of the Shana? The Chodshei Hashana is Chadashim Hashayochim L'Shana. Those are the months that are connected to the idea of Shana, repetition, Ishtalshulus, Teva, Shaychus to the world. Hem HaGiluyim She Nimshochim ba'olam b'levush ha'teva. So it's Chodshei Hashana. Those are revelations that come down in the Shana. They come down to the world in the garments of Teva. So b'zehu shemoisif rishon hu lochem lechodshei hashana. For you, for the Yidden, even the Chodshei Hashana, the regular the levush ha'teva, is Rishon, who Lochem Nitzon is the beginning. Shebi Yisrael, Lochem, by Yidden, Yiyah HaGilui Delakus, Shelamayla Mehateva. It will be the revelation of godliness, which is higher than Teva, which is Nisan, Gam B'Teva, also in Chodshei Hashana. So that means that there was a change, that it's no longer Chodshei Hashana, because the Giluyim of higher than Tava impact also Tava. So there's a change in Chodshei Hashana, that even the Chodshei Hashana become Rishon hu lochem. They are Hanog and Nisis from the level of Nisa. But the Rebbe says, even according to this, we still need to understand. The L'chayra Inyan Zeh would seem this idea, Shabi Yisrael Gam Be'ateva, Tzorich Liyas Nigosh Halakush Halamayla Ma'ateva. This that we're saying by a Yid, even in his nature, he should feel godliness which is higher than nature. Hu biu rak al zeh shel achre yitzias Mitzrayim chodshei hashana sheyochem gam lenisum. That only explains that after Yitzias Mitzrayim, the month of the years are also connected to Nisan. So that the month of the years aren't just natural month, but you have to sense in the natural month the godliness. But it's not the reason to negate natural months altogether. We're saying that you bring Nisan, Rosh Hashanah, in the Chodshei Hashana. So there is still Chodshei Hashana, and you bring the Nisan then. Avomahu hatam. What is the reason? Al zeh sheminyan hachadoshim gam the Chodesh Hashana, that the counting of the month, also the Chodesh Hashana, achshov horak b'Nisan v'lo mitishrei. Why is it only for Nisan mitishrei? The mikivon shechodesh Hashana heim hagiluyim hashayachim lebriya, since the Chodesh Hashana are the giluyim which are connected to creation. Shabehem hoyot chilot Tishrei Rishon. In them, Tishrei was the first in the Giluyim. Lama nishtana. Why did this change? Achshav shenisan hu Rishon l'Chodesh Hashana. Now that Nisan is the Rishon Chodesh Hashana, that infuses the Chodesh Hashana in L'mayla Mishtaslus Varigam Achshav. But even today, Afshe B'Yisrael Gam B'Hateva Tzorich Li is Nirgash Halakus Shalamayla Mateva. Yes, in the Yidden you need to feel in godliness higher than Teva. V'Afa Pikein Rosh Hashanah Hu B'Echad B'Tishrei. Rosh Hashanah is still in the first day of Tishrei. What it tells us is we didn't get rid really of Tishrei altogether. Tishrei is still Rosh Hashanah. Okay, you added that in Rosh Hashanah, in the Bria, you have to feel higher than Bria. So Nisan is influential on the Chodesh Hashana, but the Chodesh Hashana l'chayra remain. That's the that should remain. That's the hamshocha from the Eir as it's connected to the world. That comes down on Tishrei. That should remain. It's not a reason for it to be but, and it does remain to an extent because Rosh Hashanah is Taki on Tishrei. So it's not the pshat that there's no longer the gilui of nature on Shtauslu, that is shaykhis to the Shtauslu on Tishrei, because that's still the Rosh Hashanah. So how do we explain that in the Torah, all the months, all the times, it's only Nisan and Tishrei seemingly is no longer existence? So both the Rebbe asks. First of all, the Rebbe says in the Loshen, because the Rebbe says in the Loshen of the Targum Yonis and everything, it seems like Nisan substituted Tishrei, the Rebbe brought down. And the Rebbe tries to explain, yes, why did it substitute? Because actually Nisan impacted also Rishon Hu Lochem L'Chodesh Hashana, that even the Chodesh Hashana, which were connected to the Ishtaushlus, the Shem Adnai, they changed. Because Rishon Hu Lochem L'Chodesh Hashana, they're infused by Nisan. But the Rebbe says that's not a reason to take away Rosh Hashanah, to take away Tishrei, and we do have Rosh Hashanah. So how does this all fit in? I say, the Rebbe says he's going to explain this. So al derech mashomer Razal, similar to what our sages of blessed memory said, that lo yehoyo tzorich lahaskil es haTorah elam hachodesh hazeh lochem. The Torah should have started with the first mitzvah, which is the mitzvah of Achodesh Hazeh Lochem. Tell them about the Korban Pesach, about Peah, all the pratim in the Parsha. Umat tam Pesach beBreishis. So the question is, what's the reason that the Chumash opens up with the Breishis? The Chumash should have started with Achodesh Hazeh. And what's the answer? Mishum koyach ma'isov higid la'amoy losis lahem nachlos goyim. The Eibishter wants to tell his people the power of his strength, that he is the one that created the world, and he therefore is allowed to give to the Yidden the inheritance of the Goyim. It's his world. La'amoy losis lahem, to give to them nachlas goyim. She'im yaimru u'masa'olam liYisrael Listimatem, if the nations of the world will say to the Yidden, you are bandits, you robbers, shekibashtem artzim shivas goyim, you conquered the land of the seven nations. How come you did it? Hem emrim lahem. So the Yidden will respond, no, kol haaretz shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu hi. All of the entire world belongs to Hashem. Hu bra, He created it. V'nisana lashi yoshebeinu. And He gave it to whoever fit fine in His eyes, whoever Hashem wanted to. B'ritzoynei nosna lahem, or b'ritzoynei nitla mehem v'nosna lanu. Willingly, He gave it to them, which means Hashem wanted, originally, He created the world, He gave it to them. And then when He wanted, not lamehem v'nosna lanu, He took it from them and gave it to us. The Torah tells us, Bereishis bara likim, Abish is telling to His people, I'm going to give you the inheritance that the Goyim were living there because it's mine. I'm the one that gave it to them. And now I chose to take it away from them and give it to you. That's why the Torah starts with Bereshis. Okay, so that's a very important part. So they didn't know what to say to the Goyim. But is that a reason for the Torah to start with that? Torah could have given this explanation orally. We didn't have to start the Torah, give the argument. So it's known the question, the lecheire ha'ashayla lahoye tzorich lahaschil es ha'Torah el ma'chodesh hazeh lochem. What's the question that we're saying? The Torah should begin a chodesh hazeh lochem. Av shebereishis bara likim goymer hu shoyresh ha'amunah. But the Bereshis bara likim, besides the response, that's the root of our belief. And the we're talking about the Eibishter is in charge. He created the world. Why does why do the Chazal ask the question? Torah shouldn't start with it. Is Hisho'inyan the Ma'aseh Bereshis? Is because this idea that Hashem created the world. All matters that followed the story of Abraham, Yaakov, and Yosef, with all the story till the Parsha Chodesh, this can be given over orally. Or write a separate book. Don't make it incorporate part of the Torah. The Torah doesn't seem like this storyline of what took place belongs in the Torah. That's the question. Why? The mekivon she'inyan ha'Torah hu tzivuim v'oros liYisrael. Since what is Torah? Torah is instructions. It's commands and instructions for the Yidden. That's what Torah. Torah means instructions. L'chein tzricha la'aschel b'mitzvah ritzoyin rishoynish and itztabu b'Yisrael. So that's why you should start with the first mitzvah that the Yidden were commanded. Since that's the question, it's not a question that we don't need to know about it or it doesn't have to be said. Question is, it doesn't belong in Torah. The Torah is a book of halachas, of instruction, of mitzvahs. So the first mitzvah is HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem. We don't have to have the other incorporated. It could be a separate book, orally. So Umau HaTirutz Mishum Koyach Ma'aseh Kulu. So what is the answer then? The Eibishter is giving us, telling us the powers. What is the answer? We would know the same thing. Arigam Kisho Inyan. The Ma'aseh Bereshis Yemosur Balpeh. Even if this idea of the act of in the beginning of the creation would have been transmitted orally, Yedu Yisrael lahoshiv al tainus u'mesoilam. The Yidden would know what to respond to the argument of the nations of the world. So the question is, what is the answer? Since the question was not that we don't need to know about it. The question is, why was it written? So what is the answer to tell them, to give them nachlas goyim? So why did it have to say in the Torah? Why couldn't it be also orally? And we would know what to answer them. Why is it part of the Torah? וגם צריך ביור. Also, we need to explain. הרי התורה היא למיילו מאוילום. Torah is higher than world. How could we make a change in Torah because of world? Here you're saying the Torah essentially needs to start with HaChodesh HaZelochem. But because of the world, because of the Targuments, the Goyim, but how could world change Torah, which Torah is higher in essence from world? Torah is higher than world. How could we say that in order to answer to the nations of the world, we should change around Torah? Now we change the Torah. Torah starts with Bereshis. They shouldn't start with Bereshis, start with HaChodsh. But because of the world, because of the situation, we change it. In order to respond to the nation of the world, these are nations of the world. It should really start with HaChodsh HaZelochem. And you're changing it that it starts with Bereshis Bara because you're trying to answer for the world. So the Rebbe asks two questions over here. First of all, to answer the argument of the nations of the world, we don't need to have it written in the Torah, which was the question in the first place. Why is it part of the Torah when the Torah is law and mitzvahs? And the second question is, how could we say that because of the nations of the world, we change around Torah? Torah is higher than the nations of the world. The Kudas Habir, the point of the explanation was here. The Zeshaloi Hoyo Tzorich Lahaschil as HaTorah as Elamachodesh Hazelachemu, when we're saying that the Torah shouldn't have started only from HaChodesh Hazelachemu, what the point over is ki kol hagiluyim shahoyu ad yitzias Mitzrayim. All the revelations that took place until the Yidden left Mitzrayim. Shabohem meduber ba'parshiyos shalifnei parshas HaChodesh, of which it is discussed in the portions that before Parsha HaChodesh, all the things that are there, they are from the light of Hashem that is connected, that has a connection to the world's Kinal Siv Gimel. But V'inyan HaTorah, the idea of Torah, who hamshochas v'gilu oir ein sof habligvul shalamayla mishaychus la'oilomis. But the idea of Torah, that you draw down and you reveal the ein sof that is unlimited, which is higher than being a connection to the world. So what the question is, v'lochein lo hoyo tzorich lahaschil es haTorah es lo mehachodesh hazeh lochem. The Torah should have started from HaChodesh HaZelochem, sheshayich liyitzias Mitzrayim. The Torah should have started. The question here is not because the Torah is Eirod. The question is, we should start with the month that is shayich to Yitzias Mitzrayim, she'oz huschal hagilui the Eirin Sof Shalamaylo Mishayichus Le'olamis. Then started the revelation of the Ein Sof, which is higher than being connected to the world. The Torah up till HaChodesh is the oir that is shayches to the world. After HaChodesh starts the oir that is bligvul, higher than shayches to the world. Why are we discussing the oir, the Torah till HaChodesh that is shayich lo'ilamis? Why don't we start right away with the oil which is higher than shayich lo'ilamis? Elo, she'afal pikein. But still, Kivon Shakavone de Torah, Hi Lahamshich Gilu Eirin Sof HaBlikvul Bagvul de Oilamis. Still, the intent of the Torah is to bring down that infinite light, Blikvul, into the limitations of the world. It's not to bring just Blikvul, to bring about the light of Blikvul, but it's to bring the light of Blikvul that it should come down in Gevul, in the Oilmas. Ubezegufa, not only just generally, binyonim achitachtoinim, even in the lowest of the levels. We want the Torah to impact in the lowest levels of the world. Lochein, yesh ba'Torah gam hasipur de ma'aseh bereshis. That's why in the Torah we also have the story of the acts of creation, of the beginning. Similarly, also the portions that precede Parsha Chodesh. B'chdei lahamshich habli gvul de Torah gam binyonim hachitachtonim. In order to draw down the blikvul of Torah into the lowest of the matters. We have all of the limitations, all of the oir that is shaykh lo'ilamos, and then we bring down the blikvul into them. The lasis bohem dira lo yizbarich, and to make a dwelling place in the gvul. Bezehu sheposach b'breishis. And that's why it started with Breishis. Mishum koyach amoy ma'isov higid la'amei losus lamnachlas goyim. Because of the power of his hands, he relates to his people to give them the inheritance of the nation. The fact, the reason that there is the Torah, the story of Ma'aseh Bereshis. Even though that which came in the Bria is only a very restricted light. As the Maimer explains at length, the reason Amashe Kosu v'Noichi Goimer Asher Hoitzi Sicho me'eretz Mitzrayim v'Loi Asher Barosi Shemayim v'Oretz. That why does it say that I've taken you out from the lands of Egypt? Why doesn't it say? Why doesn't it say that I've created the Shemayim v'Oretz? So in the Maimer he explains that Barosi Shemayim v'Oretz is a very small. That's a very restricted. It says Eretz Mitzrayim was a Gilui of Blikvul. So the reason why we have this Tzimtzum Hu is Kitachlis HaKavone de Torah Hishe Yisrael Yivareru Kames Nachlas Goyim, because the ultimate intent of the Torah is that the Yidden should sort out also the inheritance of the nation. V'yasu oisol Eretz Yisrael, turn it into Eretz Yisrael. V'shahabirur yiyah, and it's not just to forcefully sort them out, but it should be ba'oifun kozeh, in such a way that they too should agree. In other words, we'll give them the rationale, we'll explain to them, so that even the goyim will see. That's how the Eibishter wants the Dire B'Tachtoinim to go as far as sorting out that the Nachla is going to make it Eretz Yisrael, even in their logic. Shelachein tzrichim Yisrael lanes lu'um Yisrael maltanosom. That's why we need to answer them on their argument, because that's what the Torah is meant to be, a Dire B'Tachtoinim, to bring the Oir HaBlikvul into the lowest levels. Even to the nations, to switch it around from Umas Oilon to make it an Eretz Yisrael. And this is also the reason Alzeh Shaposak beBreishis. So why did he open up with Breishis? He opens up with Breishis because ultimately that's the kavanah. The kavanah is all about bringing it down into Bereshis. Yes, Gilui Oir, Nisan is a higher Oir, but the point of this higher Oir, the point of the Blikvul, is to bring it down into the world. So it's Pasach beBereshis. V'zeu gam matayim al zeh shePasach beBereshis. Ki hashleimus dedire betachtonim. Because what is the ultimate, the wholesome, the complete dwelling place? Betachtonim hu she'atachten mitzad inyon yiyeh keli lelikus. That the tachten, from his perspective, from his inyan, the way he is, he should turn and become a vehicle, a vessel to godliness. The inyan zeh, how could you make the tachten? If you push him from the outside, he doesn't really transform. He's just being pushed. This is specifically by sorting out in a way of dressing up. You get into the arguments and you figure it out and you answer them and you reason and they accept it. Then you're mevarer them and they become a keli. It starts from below to above. So the Torah begins with Bereshis. And this is therefore the order of the stories that happen in the Torah. When you learn it in the Torah, you're actually sorting it out. So we learn, we sort out the way we're mevara. First, we start making the world a keli by learning about it. We start from below to above. First, we have the Sipur Maaseh Bereshis. We have the story of the creation, the act of the beginning. That includes that even the Nachlas Goyim is sorted out. Eretz Yisrael, it turns over from Nachlas Goyim, becomes Eretz Yisrael. Which is a greater, bitter, higher level. Then only afterwards we come to Chodesh Zalochem. The Rebbe explained over here that the reason why the Torah started with Bereshis Bara, even though the Torah could have given this answer for the argument and the Chlal, we don't need to write it into the Torah. The Rebbe says the issue here is that it seems that the Gilui that comes after Chodesh Nisan, Yitzias Mitzrayim, is a much higher Gilui. So why bother with the Giluyim of Lifnei Matan Torah? Why bother with Bereshis Bara when they're just a limited Gilui? And the answer is that the Kavanah is Tafke in that limited Gilui. The Eibishter wants to bring down the Nisan, that it should come down in the Tishrei, meaning that it should impact, so that the world, that the Nachlas Goyim, which is, and Dafke through logic, through argument, to change them around and bring them about, that makes them a keli, so that later on, that's the ultimate kavanah of the Nisan to actually come down into the world. And we start the study Milmata Lamailo. We start with the Bereshis Bara, with the word of nature, until we build it up, Achidish Zalochem. And then the Rebbe will continue with this idea and bring it back around to the idea of Nisan and Tishrei. Why? What happens is that Tishrei remained, and what happens that after Nisan, we'll continue that in Mitzvah Hashem later on. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Difficult a little bit, but it is interesting. We'll keep on doing it. Yeah, we'll see that.